Hi everyone, Happy New Year! To kick off 2020, I'm going to do just a fun video where I'm going to be ranking lots of things to do with wedding photography into a tier list. Now, I'm not sure if any of you've seen, but there's been a bit of a trend on YouTube over the past few months for tier lists where people have ranked anything and everything into tier lists. So I thought I'd do the same for wedding photography. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in lots of different things that are all related to wedding photography and running a wedding photography business into 5 different tiers. We've got God tier at the top, which is like the absolute best of the best. You can't live without these things. Awesome, which is just still really good, but not quite the absolute top level. We've got good, which is good. We've got meh, which is whatever, you know, what doesn't really like strike a chord with you, and just no, just like no, we're not even going to talk about it, get rid of it, in the bin. So they're the categories that I'm going to be using. Now this video is just a bit of fun, it is not meant to be controversial, but please do let me know in the comment section of this video what you think, because you can guarantee that everyone would have a different list. So please do let me know what you think I've got right or what I've got wrong. So I hope you enjoy the video, let's crack on. Now just to start with, I've not put any cameras in this tier list, which might seem a bit strange for a wedding photography tier list, but well, one, they're a little bit boring, but also I wanted to include things which I had first-hand experience of using, but I've not used that many. I've never owned a Canon camera, I've never owned a Fuji camera, so I didn't think it was really fair to do that. But what I have included, I have experience of. So we're going to kick off with Adobe Lightroom. Now Lightroom for me is absolutely essential to the way that I work. I would say that every image that I've taken over the past maybe even 10 years, I've had Lightroom since it first came out, has been edited primarily in Lightroom. So that has to go straight into God tier for me. It's something that I just could not live without when it comes to wedding photography, so straight into God for Lightroom. Next up is Confetti. Now I really like Confetti. I think it can give you really nice moments. It's quite an easy shot to take. I'm not a big fan sometimes of setting it up because it can be quite difficult, but on the other hand, as I say, you get good moments. So it's maybe awesome, it's probably not awesome, it's good. Because it does give you good moments. So Confetti goes into good. Next up is tripods. Now this is a list about wedding photography, and I don't really think tripods really have much of a place. They can be used to good effect for creative photographs if you want to do long exposures, which I've used myself quite a few times, especially for light painting photographs. So they do have a place, but apart from that, really, I think they just are quite cumbersome, quite old-fashioned. They may just slow you down. The way that I like to work is about being quick, being reactionary, so having a tripod just doesn't really have a place in the way that I work. So I'm going to put it into meh. Yeah, you know, I don't want to banish all tripods, but equally, you know, I can't really say that they're better than meh. Next up, this could be a bit of a controversial one. This is coloured smoke bombs or smoke pellets. Now, I don't really have a problem. In fact, I can quite like clear smoke, so artificial smoke that you bring onto a wedding day, but I like it to look quite authentic, so it can look like mist or haze. But what I'm referring to here is coloured smoke bombs, where sometimes you put them on the floor. I've seen, you know, some photographers ask the bride and groom to hold up the smoke bombs, you know, and it's a style thing. Like, if it works for you, then brilliant, go for it. But for me, it doesn't, so I'm going to put them into just no, I'm afraid. Sorry, smoke bombs, we won't say any more about it. Next up is 24-70mm lens. Now, if you watch my channel, I'm sure you know what my favourite lenses are, and I prefer to shoot with prime lenses for reasons which I won't go into on this video because I've mentioned it many times on my channel. The 24-70 is almost like the definition of a sort of jack of all trades lens. It can be good, I suppose, if you only want to take one lens to a wedding and you want to be able to do various things with it, but ultimately, you know, you can only shoot at best at 2.8. It doesn't really give you much creative opportunities to create bokeh, so it's just the very definition of an average sort of boring-ish lens. So, you know, It's better than meh, but I'm going to put it into good. But it's definitely no, but it's on the cusp of being meh, but we'll be kind. Next up, this isn't a photo frame, this is the word frame, where I've seen some photographers, and this is just my problem, you know, don't worry about it, but some photographers call their photographs frames. Like, this is like the best 10 frames from the last wedding that I shot. I just think it sounds a little bit pretentious. Potentially. This is probably on me, it's probably my problem, so don't worry about it if you do use it, but for me, yeah, just that word frames. These other words that I don't like as well, like TOG, when people abbreviate photographer for TOG, it just sort of goes through me, like nails going down on a blackboard. But yeah, so yeah, for me, it's just no. Let's move on. Next up is the 35mm lens. Now, again, if you watch my channel, you'll know already that this is my absolutely favourite lens. And if I could only use one lens to photograph a wedding, without any doubt, it will be the 35mm lens. You can shoot landscapes with it, you can shoot documentary with it. It's the best lens for me for documentary photographs. And I also love it for portraits as well. And the fact that it's a prime as well, I feel really sort of like helps you develop as a photographer. Again, there's a video up here, which I will link to, where I go into more detail about why I think the 35mm is a god tier wedding photography item. So that video explains all the reasons why, but I absolutely adore the 35mm lens. It's probably the lens which I take 78% of every photograph I ever take with, so it's got to be a god tier item for me. Next up is Facebook. Now, Facebook's a funny one because a few years ago, Facebook for wedding photographers used to be a really good tool. It was a really good way of getting your work out there and getting it seen by lots of new people. But since Facebook has changed its sort of algorithms and you don't have to pay, which I have no real issue with, I understand, you know, they're a business, but now that you have to pay to promote your posts, it's just lost a lot of its appeal. And I've noticed that the reach that I get when I post photographs now on Facebook has just dropped like a stone. So it's really lost a lot of its appeal in terms of growing a business online, I feel. But having said that, I do love it for groups. So for example, I have my own Facebook group for my wedding photography workshop attendees, which is a really great community, which I'm really proud of. I love the MagMod community group as well, so the groups feature on there is really good, but in general for a wedding photography business, it's not what it was. So were this a few years ago, I would have put it into awesome, but now I'm going to put it into meh, because it's only the groups really for me that really sort of like give it any sort of usability. Next up is Photomechanic. Now, if you haven't used Photomechanic, I would massively encourage you to do so. Photomechanic basically only really has one purpose as a piece of software, but it's so good at that, and it's basically being able to cull and sort your images really, really quickly. So you can download your images all into Lightroom and go through them and star them and things like that, but you might find if you do that in Lightroom, it just takes that fraction of a second just to render the image. Whereas with Photomechanic, due to crazy magic science, it is just instant. It makes culling so much faster. So I can't quite put it into God tier because there is software such as Lightroom which you could get by without Photomechanic, but it's definitely awesome for me. And it's a piece of software that if you haven't used it already, I would definitely recommend that you do, and I bet that you'll soon think, why have I not used this earlier? So Photomechanic goes into awesome. Okay, and next up is color popping or selective color, which is basically where you have a black and white photograph, but you make certain parts of that black and white photograph into color. It's something which I must admit makes me feel slightly ill. Even making this little thumbnail for this made me just want to retch. So yeah, it's something that I've been asked for a few times, and I will always do it. If my bride and groom ask for it, then yeah, I have no problem doing that. You know, it's whatever, I want to make my bride and grooms happy. But for me, it just looks awful, and I don't know why it even is still a thing. So I'm afraid colour popping or selective colour, just know, without any shadow of a doubt. It's a shame there's not a category below that, because it'd probably go into there. Okay, so next up is the MagMod Grid, or the Mag Grid as it's known. For me, this is the best thing which MagMod produce. It's certainly the thing that I use the most. It's rare that I will take an off-camera flash photograph without using the MagMod Grid, and it is just incredible to me how this tiny little bit of rubber can make such a huge difference to an off-camera flash photograph, and it does that by limiting the spill of the light. There are many videos on my channel, I'll link to one up here, where you can see me using the Mag Grid, but I say it is the thing that I use the most when it comes to off-camera flash. So it has to, for me, go straight into God tier. As I say, I use it all the time, and the difference that it can make to a photograph, it can take an off-camera flash photograph from good to, whoa, that looks really good. It's just crazy good. So the Mag Grid is God tier for me. So next up is Photoshop. Photoshop's a funny one because it can be incredible, but at the same time, when it comes to running a wedding photography business, it can sort of slow you down, I feel. Lightroom for me does 90% of what I need when it comes to editing. I do use Photoshop for that last 10% sometimes, but in the main, it's something that I almost wish that I didn't use as much as I probably do use, because I feel as though it does slow me down. Having said that, I'm no expert on Photoshop, so I might not be using it to, well, I know I'm not using it to the best of its ability. If Lightroom didn't exist, Photoshop would be God tier, but Lightroom does exist. So because of that, it's going to be good or awesome. It's in between. I'm going to put it into good because I say it is good, but it's not something that I find is essential. Next up is, this is online debates with questions such as, do you have food in your contract? What's better, Canon or Nikon or Sony or Fuji? Do you have prices on your website? They're just questions that you just think, oh, they never end well. No one ever changes their opinion. It just causes arguments, and it's just a complete waste of time. I don't think if you ever see any of these arguments, anyone has ever changed their mind based on something that somebody else has said in that thread. So for me, those sort of like arguments are straight into just no. Just don't waste your time even getting involved. But if you must know, you don't need food in your contract. We're wedding photographers, not rock stars. Okay, next up is the 85mm lens. The 85mm is the yin to my 35mm yang, if that's even a saying. I love the 85mm lens. It just complements the 35mm so well, and it's brilliant for portrait. So again, for me and the way that I work, it's absolute God tier. Those two lenses are basically all I use, so they have to be in God tier for me. Next up is a loupe. Now, I'm not going to go on into much detail about why a loupe is useful. If you are interested in finding out why I think the loupe is so good, then if you have a watch of this video, you'll hear me talking about it a little bit more. But basically, for a DSLR, you don't need it if you're using mirrorless because you've got the EVF, but for DSLRs, a loupe is just an amazing way at judging very quickly how good your exposure is, whether it's under or overexposed, especially in bright conditions. When I was using my Nikon DSLRs, this was almost God tier, but I'm going to put it into awesome because I felt that if I didn't have that with me on a wedding day, I felt naked and like, oh, I'm missing something and my work's going to suffer for it. So it's definitely an awesome item, but not if you're using mirrorless cameras. As I say, you don't need it then. Okay, next up, and this could be a little bit controversial, but remember, it's just my opinion, don't have a go at me. This is cameras that only have one memory card slot. Now, I know it's really rare for memory cards to fail, I get that. My problem with having a camera that has only got one memory card slot in it isn't really to do with a memory card failing, although that is massive. Well, I dread to think how you would feel if that were to happen to you. But my bigger problem is more that I want 2 copies of all the files that I use, especially when I'm leaving a wedding. I want to be able to take one card out of the camera and put it into my wallet where it's really safe, and the other stays in the camera. So if I'm going home, for example, and I want to get petrol, or I'm just nipping somewhere on the way back, then if I go into wherever I go, I've got a copy of everything in my pocket, and I've also got a copy of everything in the car as well. It's that security that I like, rather than the fact that most people, when they're debating whether it's important, talk about a card failing, which I say is huge, but it's more the fact that I say I want 2 copies. And the thing is as well, it's 2020 now, so for wedding photographers, where the work that we're making and these memory cards are holding for us is so important. Like, our whole business depends on those memory cards, or the memory card, like, surviving the journey home to the point we download all the images. So for me, it's the thought of having a camera which only has one memory card slot is just no. So that's going straight into just no. Next up is the 70-200 lens. Now, this used to be one of my most used lenses, but then I discovered prime lenses, and I discovered Tyler Working and his advice, and it soon became apparent to me that the 70-200 was holding me back from taking the photographs which I now love the most, i.e. close-up documentary images. So the 70-200 almost encourages you to stand away from the action, stand in the corner of the room and just like be a sniper from 20 yards away, where that's not the way that I want to work. So I feel as though not only is it a zoom lens, which I say I'm not the biggest fan of anyway, but it's a lens which encourages you to be far away, and I just feel for the way that I want to work as a wedding photographer, that is like the exact opposite of what I want to achieve. So, you know, I'm not going to put it in just no because it is a nice portrait lens, but I'm going to put it into meh because I say, like, it's not for me basically. Next up, I'm not going to spend any real time on this one, is Speedlights. Obviously, a lot of the work that I do involves the use of flash, off-camera flash, so it has to be God tier for me. If I was to shoot a wedding with natural light, I'm sure I'd be happy doing that, but I don't feel as though I feel as though my work would suffer for me not being able to use my off-camera Speedlight, so straight into God tier for Speedlights. Next up is crystals, and basically things that you put in front of your camera lens maybe to create effects. Now, I've made a whole video on using crystals which I will link to up here, and I think they have a real place for certain creative portraits, but equally I feel as though you have to be very careful in terms of how often you use it. They are like something that I feel can take a photograph to another level, but not all that often, and you have to use them sparingly. So it's definitely not an awesome thing to use, but it's definitely not meh. They are really good when used at the right time and place, so definitely good for me. So crystals go into good. Okay, now next up is, again, it's something that just goes through me, and it's seeing photographers online, often in Facebook groups and forums, again, sort of, dare I say, bragging about being fully booked, or I've only got space for one more wedding booking this year. These things that, it just goes through me. The photographers that I know of who are genuinely busy all the time wouldn't do that, and I just think it looks a little bit, I don't know. Now, again, I've made a video about this sort of thing, which I'll link to up here. It's one of the reasons why I feel as though Facebook can be quite detrimental to wedding photographers sometimes now, because you can start to believe all this stuff that you've seen other photographers saying. So yeah, I'm not a fan. For me, it's just no. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Okay, next up is the MagSphere. Now, I love this. Again, it's not something that I use all that often. Certainly I don't use it as often as the Grid, but the Sphere can be an amazing little modifier to really enhance your off-camera flash photographs. It's like a little softbox that you can keep in your bag. So for me, it's an awesome item. I say I don't use it all that often, so it's not really quite God tier, but when I do use it, it's brilliant. So yeah, straight into awesome for the MagSphere. Now, next up is something that I used to love years ago, which is the fisheye lens. When I first bought my fisheye lens, probably about 2010, 2011, I loved it, and I just thought, oh, this looks so cool. It doesn't look cool. So yeah, I'm not going to talk much more about it. I'm just sorry for the couples whose wedding I photographed around that time, where a lot of your photographs may have very circular edges to them. So that's going in the bin. That's a just no for me now. Next up is Instagram. Now, I think Instagram is a really good tool for photographers. Whereas Facebook has limited the reach and it just seems to be harder and harder to get exposure on Facebook, Instagram seems to be the opposite almost. Through the use of hashtags, your work can get out there and be seen by quite a lot of people, and I just really enjoy using it like a portfolio basically. So yeah, Instagram is good. The stories feature is really good as well, so yeah, I'm going to put that in awesome. It's far better than Facebook anyway, in my opinion now. I hope that doesn't change in the future. Obviously Instagram is owned by Facebook, and I'm sure at some stage they're going to start monetizing it more so than they do already. But for now, I think it's awesome when it comes to building a wedding photography business. Okay, just 2 more left. This next one is heart-shaped group shots. So when you may have been asked, I'm sure we all have, I've been asked a few times and I'll always do it, but it's where you're asked to take a group shot in the shape of a heart, where typically the bride and groom might be right in the middle. They're just cheesy. They take a long time to set up, especially because you've got somebody just wandering off. By their nature, you're normally trying to take these from high up above, so it's hard to organise them. And ultimately, what you're left with, a shot that just looks a little bit cheesy and embarrassing, so just no. Okay, and last but not least is what we in the UK call Uncle Bob's. An Uncle Bob is somebody at a wedding, a family member usually, with a camera, usually a big camera, often like with a big 7200 lens, but who is sort of there to take photographs in their own mind rather than enjoying the day. And I have no issue whatsoever with guests taking as many photographs as they want at the wedding, but I think it's a shame when that gets to a point where you feel as though they're not in the moment of the wedding day. But ultimately, they're just happy to take photographs. So, you know, I can relate to that. They love photography and they just want to take a few photographs themselves. So I'm not in any way against them. I feel a bit sorry for them, I think. So for me, they're going to put in meh. I know some people have a real issue with people like that. I don't. At the end of the day, they love photography just as we all do. So that's my tier list. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know in the comments what you think and where you would place certain items, because I'm pretty sure, as I said at the beginning of the video, that no one is going to agree with my list completely. So I'd be interested to know what you would place where. So if you have enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it, as always, if you could please leave a like on the video and maybe subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already for more videos like this in the future. Having said that, I do understand that if you use selective colouring, you're going to unsubscribe. I understand, it's nothing personal, I get it. So thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you next time.